host, Prince Larmy Jarbo, and today we're back again with another segment, another lesson about financial literacy, which is on the segment called Making Money Moves. This is a segment we have introduced to educate our people on basic financial principles, so simple things that help us learn how to practicalize making wise financial decisions. So thank you for joining. If this is something that interests you and you're not already following the platform, please make sure you do. We have a lot of personal content that can benefit you, not just on this series, but also on other segments as well that we have where we introduce or interview entrepreneurs and bring on their stories to inspire other change makers like yourself. So if this is something that interests you, feel free to follow the 1847 show. Stay engaged in the comments. We have a very interesting topic here today, and it's pretty straightforward. We have some financial terms from the book How Money Works, and I'm going to put the image on the screen so you guys are familiar with it. So for those of you who do not know, that's the image. How Money Works is pretty a financial literacy book, and it's really targeted at the American audience, but yet and still it has valuable information that anyone anywhere in the world can benefit from. And until we have our own version created by a Liberian, I'm not going to say who, we can make use of it because it still has some valuable information that we can learn from. So How Money Works is really trying to instill basic or baseline financial literacy into people from when before they're even born, as done by their parents. And the hope is that with those discipline, with those teachings, they can grow to be adults who do not run the rat race. If you do not know what the rat race is, it's pretty much when you live paycheck to paycheck and you really cannot see any progress in your life financially. You're always just trying to survive. So the book is trying to educate you on how you can, change those bad habits, make better, wiser financial decisions, and be more intentional about your money. So this book is a book that I have personally read, and we're taking pieces of that information that is relevant to our Liberian culture to share with you. Now, if you're also interested, because I've read the book, I can help you get a copy of the book to read. So if that's something that you would like based on what we talked about today, if it's enticing enough and you want to read further, you can simply email us, go in our social media, give us a private message, and we can share a copy with you. We'll be more than happy. Again, our objective here is to educate people. So if you go the extra mile and you want to be educated, we will more than love that. So we're going to cover about 5 or 6 terms today from that book in this lesson, which is Series 2, Lesson 1. Before we get started, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Bosco baby, B to the O, S to the C, O, straight out of China. I represent LIB. The song playing in the background is my latest single called Like It or Not. You can find me on social, especially YouTube at Bosco_LIB, and also on Instagram at Bosco_LIB, and also on Facebook at Bus Music. Right now, you're watching the 1847 show. You know it's about you and me and all things Liberian. So follow the 1847 show on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also on formerly Twitter and now X. So let's go, 2024. See you.
My name is Grace Choma Baba, founder of Destiny Creative Organization and owner at Janice Snacks. You are watching the 1847 show. The 1847 show celebrates you, me, and all things like you. Follow the 1847 show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The 1847 show, all things like you.
Welcome back, everyone. You're watching the 1847 show, and this is our financial literacy segment, also known as Making Money Moves. On this series specifically, we're going to learn very, very straightforward terms from the book, How Money Works. And I've already gone over what that book is about. I'm going to put an image on the screen here so you can see if this is something you're interested in. So that is it right there, How Money Works. Stop being a sucker. And being a sucker is really an American term that tell you to do better, make wiser decisions. Don't suck up to, don't eat up to things that people are giving you and information that people are giving you. Be more decisive, stay on your own, right? So some of the terms that we're going to talk about today are percentages. Of course, all of these are in the financial terms. So we're going to talk about percentages, inflation. We're going to talk about compound interest, the impact of loss as well, and risk diversification. So those are the terms that we're going to talk about 5 of them. Now, percentages, pretty straightforward. You have a business. We'll give an example, and someone says, "Hey, please loan me $100." And then you're like, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, you know that you want to make interest on your money, right? You want to earn additional to what you're loaning, which is the interest. So you want to make interest on the principal that you're loaning. Now, they're like, okay, I can pay you, if you loan me $100, I can either pay you $105 or I can pay you 10%. Which would you prefer? Now, as a consumer, most times they're not even going to give you that option. But let's be hypothetical and say that's what they're asking you. Maybe they're trying to test your intelligence, right? So if somebody says I can give you $105 total, which is the principal of $100 and the $5 for the interest, or I can give you 10% of the principal, which is 10% of $100. What are you going to choose, right? So you got to know the power of percentages and just understanding the concept of percentages. So $105 essentially is 5%. The extra $5 is 5% of $100. So doing straightforward math, 10% you already know is better than $105. But if you do not understand percentages and how they work, then you could say, okay, just give me the $105 because you already know exactly what that is. But if you know how to do the background math quickly in your head, then you could just pick the 110 or the 10%. Now, something else to keep in mind is it's very simple. You don't need to do this in your head. You can use your calculator. So it's just 10% is 10 divided by 100, which you're going to get 0.1, right? And then you multiply that by whatever the original principal is to know how much you're going to make in addition to the principal. So it's pretty straightforward, but percentages is really important. And the reason why you want to go with a percentage rather than the original $5 that they're telling you, because percentages allow you to have proportional growth. So, for example, if somebody makes, if you gave them $100 and then you told them, hey, you need to pay back the principal, but I also want, in addition to that, I want 10% of your profit that you would make. That's a different term and condition. Now, your 10%, the reason you want to go with percentages is because when you say that 10% of your profit, then you are not stagnating the amount of money you can get back. So if the person make $50, well, guess what? You get 10% of that. If they make $1,000, you also get 10% of that, which means that you could essentially, you have created an avenue where you can make more money because it's based off a percent. But if you just tell them, oh, give me $20 from your profit, then you have really limited yourself. And as an entrepreneur, as an individual of any sort, you do not want to limit yourself. So when you can, always go the percentage route. Drake in one of his songs said, "I only do percentages," because he understands the concept of percentage, the power of percentages. And really, you just do the math at the end of the day. When a person has done making their profits and everything, how much did you make in profit? Okay, give me 10% of that. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're on the consumer end of things, you also want to know that percentages can work against you. They can work against you. So the higher the percentage, the more you have to come out of pocket. So do not get a loan. Do not get any form of investment that is going to have a very high percentage of interest that you have to pay. So you got to keep that in mind as well. Is you can either be the person loaning the money to a friend, to a business partner, or being the consumer who is receiving the loan. And if you're receiving the loan, do not, if you can, negotiate. Everything is negotiable. Negotiate as lowly as you can on the percentages, on your interest rates. So if you take a 10% interest rate, it means that if you make $100, you have to pay the person back $100 plus another $10 for interest. Don't do that. If you can negotiate 5%, then you only have to pay back $5. Of course, you still have to pay some type of interest because nobody likes to not make money just like yourself. So just try to negotiate a lower rate. So those are percentages for you. We're talking about them both as a person who is an entrepreneur and also as a person who is loaning the money. So you got to know which end and how to use percentages. But if you can, do not ever put yourself in a situation where you're just aiming for a flat fee, unless that person is your sister or your family member and you really don't care about the money and you're just trying to build the relationship. Then go ahead and do that. Why don't you even try giving them a free loan? You know, they have interest-free loan and they just have to pay back your principal. So I recommend that if that's your goal, since you're not in the business of making money. I'm just teasing. That is also an option. Okay. Now, the next topic we're going to talk about is inflation. So, what is inflation? All of these, I'm going to describe it in layman's terms so that we can understand it. So, inflation is just the gradual decrease of the value of your money, right? And it affects you over time if you cannot keep up with inflation. So, inflation happens by just consumer and how we consume things, the prices of production, everything that people are using as far as materials to make products. When those prices go up, when we consume more and it costs a lot to produce what we consume, then the prices of things go up, which increases inflation because suppliers, people who are in the market have to make up for those increases. So then the prices of things go up. And then you, as a consumer, now you got to pay more money. So the price has been inflated, it has increased. So inflation is when your money, the money that you have as a consumer, gradually decreases in value. And it's decreasing in value because if you have $10 today and you go in the market tomorrow, and today $10 can buy you a cup of rice, right? But if you go in the market tomorrow and that $10 now, that cup of rice is now $15, well, your money has inflated. It has decreased in value. So how can we understand inflation to be able to fight against inflation? Well, one of the things that we need to do is find vehicles, financial vehicles, where we can keep our money, then to allow us to earn interest. Now we're on the benefiting side of interest. So one of the ways you can do it is to put your money in an interest-bearing account. So a savings account, a checking account, mostly your savings account with the bank is going to have a higher interest rate than a checking account because they're intended for savings, which when you save, you want to earn some money on your money, right? Because it's much longer term. Checking is you just have an account to transact as you go. So you don't really need to save or earn interest. So you get a savings account, you want to ask the bank, is this an interest-bearing account? Which means, can I earn money on the money that I'm going to save? Now, if that sounds like a foreign concept to you, then let me introduce you to the business of money. Because when you take your money to the bank is not gonna, say, "Oh, thank you for bringing your money here. Let's put it in this safe. Nobody will ever touch it." No, the bank is taking your money and giving it to another person that needs money to open a business. And guess what they're doing? They're making money on your money. So if you are not making interest, you are the one who is taking the risk by bringing your money to this bank and entrusting them. If you are not making interest and they're the only one benefiting from your money, then there's a problem. That's why you need to make sure that your money is earning interest when it's with the bank, and a high of an interest rate as you can. And you can only do that by going from one bank to another bank. But every year, there is an increase in overall inflation in the market, again, based on the consumer price index, how much people are consuming, the total value of everything in the economy. Now, you want to keep up inflation from one year to another. It can increase very much, but typically we're looking around up to 5%, 5 to 10%. In Liberia, I'm not quite sure, but I'm sure it can go up as high as 15%. So if your money is decreasing in value by 15%, up to 15% in a year, let's say 10% to be a little modest, 10%. So if you have $100 today, next year, and you keep that $100, it can only buy you, it's only worth $90 now. It has decreased in value by 10%. That's what that means. So if it's not in an account that's earning you some interest that can keep up with the inflation rate, then your money is going to be losing value. So understanding inflation and knowing how to fight inflation can also help you. And then back to our previous example, another way besides saving your money that you could fight inflation is giving your money out with loan with a higher interest rate, or a decent interest rate. So if you know the inflation rate is about 10%, when you loan your money to people, maybe charge 15%. So your money is always going to have that spending power as you originally had, because you are beating the inflation rate. Inflation rate is 10%, you charge 15%, you're 5% over, you can buy more, your money has more spending power. So that's another way you can beat inflation. So we've talked about percentages, we talked about inflation. The next we're going to talk about is interest, right? Interest. What is interest? We've already kind of talked about it. But really, what is interest? Well, you have two types of interest. We have simple interest and we have compound interest. Simple interest is, like it says, it's very simple, it's straightforward. But the whole concept of interest, regardless of the type, is when your money makes you money. It's the earned income from money that you invested, or for money that somebody invested in you. So in the previous example that we gave, if $100 is invested and you promise to pay back interest of $10, that additional $10 is interest. It's the money that the $100 earned. So that's the interest. Now, simple interest is as it is. It's based on just the principal. So if I charge you 10% simple interest, I'm telling you, you are just paying me 10% of the principal that I will invest. If you charge 10% simple interest, it's just based on the initial principal. Compound interest, on the other hand, compounds, is combined with the principal and the interest over a continuous period and is calculated periodically. So simple interest is simple when it's good when you are the consumer, you want to go the simple interest route. When you are the investor, if you can, go the compound interest route. Now, compound interest, however, is more of a long-term investment. You really see the significance, the difference between simple interest and compound interest in the long term. We're talking about years in. So, for example, with compound interest, you say, okay, I'm going to give you a loan of $1,000, and I want you to pay back that $1,000 in 5 years. Now, compound interest, if you just use simple interest, and we say the interest rate is 10%. Now, over that 5 years, the person is only going to pay $100 in interest, right? But if you say compound interest of 10%, well, guess what? Every year, if it's an annual compound, which means it increases, it's calculated annually, then the first year they will pay 1,000 and then $1,100. So the principal of what you call it of 1,000, and then the interest, the initial interest of $100. That's the first year. But the next year, it's not just going to be based on the principal. It's going to be based on the principal and that interest that have already been earned. So your 10% now that you're recharging for year two is going to be based off of $1,100. So for the second year, you're going to earn $110 only in interest because it's based off of the first interest and the initial principal. And then the next year, it goes up again because you're adding that 1,110 to the first 1,100. You're adding the 110 to the initial 1,100. And then you calculate the interest again, 10% of all that total in the third year. And it increases until the 5-year marks reaches. So that's compound interest. It compounds, it doubles pretty much. So simple interest and compound interest. But interest is just the money that your money makes. Now, next, we'll talk about the impact of loss. Let's say you invested money. We have a comment here. Let's see. Thank you, Edwin. We're watching from Buchanan. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. If you have a question, you can put it in the comment section as well. But yes, so let's say you have, I'm trying to put this back up here. Let's go. Let's say you've invested. The next topic here is impact of loss. You've invested. And you invested in someone that you didn't really know, or maybe you knew them and their business just went south. It plummeted. And you can't really get your money back. So you invested $100 in them. Now, I like to use $100 or 1,000 because it keeps things simple, right? We're just trying to educate. We're not trying to confuse anybody, even myself. So you invested $100 in the person and their business it didn't work out because they made a bad business decision or whatever the reason is. And they're only able to pay you back $50. So the impact of loss is pretty much asking you now, how much do you need to make to recover your initial $100 investment? How much? If you invest $100, the person only pay you back $50. You've lost what? $50 of your initial investment. How much do you need to make to recover that? Well, logically, you would think to yourself, I only need to make $50 to cover that. Then I will be even. But the answer is no. You need to make 100% of what you have to cover that. Because if the person only returns $50 to you, you have $50. You need to make 100% of $50 to recover, to return to that original $100. Because if you say, I only need to make 50%, 50% of what? The $100 that you don't have anymore? No, you cannot use that because you do not have that money anymore. So you need to make $100, 100% of the $50 that you have. So if you make 100% of $50, 100% of $50, that's $50. $50 plus the original $50 that they return to you brings you back to that $100. Where if you say, oh, I need to make 50%, well, 50% of $50 is $25. So you only have $75 total, which you'll still be missing $25. So you have not recovered from the loss that you incurred. So in order to come on top, when you come across the impact of loss like that, you need to make 100% of what that loss amount was, which means how that goes into practice is you got to double your efforts. You got to double your effort. Whatever you're doing, multiply it by 2. Because if you don't double your effort, you're going to still be in the negative. and not many businesses thrive in the negative. So keep that in mind. The last thing we're going to talk about here is risk diversification. So what is risk diversification? As the simple term goes, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's understanding as an entrepreneur, as an investor, that things can happen. If you entrust all your resources, everything that you've earned, and entrust it to one person, invest it in one person, that's a problem. Or one business, that's a problem. Because like I said, businesses do go out of business. Businesses do have bad years. So what happens to all your investment? They become nothing. Or you experience that impact of loss where you have to double your efforts to recover. And you do not want to go through that if you do not have to go through that. You always want to mitigate risk when it comes to investment. So risk diversification is you simply understanding that concept and applying it and saying, okay, since it's not wise for me to put all my eggs in one basket, and your eggs being the investment that you have, the money that you have, let me spread them out. Let me put some here, let me invest some with this company, invest another with this other company, and then invest another with this other company. Because if this company goes out of business, well, guess what? I still have these two companies that I can rely on to make me or to recover, help me recover from that. And sometimes it might not even go out of business. Sometimes they might just have a really bad year. What happens to your money? Right? Those other two companies can still help you experience some sort of gain. So risk diversification is just diversifying or spreading out your investments through different vehicles, through different avenues. And those are the topics that we're going to cover today. We've talked about risk diversification, obviously. We talked about the impact of loss. We also talked about compound interest and simple interest, or just interest in general. We talked about inflation and percentages. And that's really what we have for you today. Now, if you've been watching this and you've learned something, or you have a question that is on your mind before we head out for the day, feel free to send those questions in the comments. We also want you to share this, because this is valuable information. Our school systems in Liberia, they do not really afford our youth to learn these topics from a very early age. So the best we can do for ourselves and our country is to share this information with other people. Because we might not need it in this moment today, but we'll need it at some point in our lives to make wise financial decisions, which is our intent here on the 1847 show, is to educate you on financial matters for you to be a better person, a better citizen for Liberia. Because when you are a better citizen, you can do more for our beloved country. So thank all of those for joining, for tuning in today. We appreciate you. And for everyone else that's out there, if this is something that interests you, we'll bring this segment to you every so often. So feel free, follow our platform so you don't ever have to miss out. We have previous episodes that you can go back and watch and learn some of the things that we've already talked about. But again, you've been watching the 1847 show. I've been your host, Prince Larmi Jarbo, and this series was Series 2, Lesson 1, which is highlighting concepts from the book, How Money Works. And we'll be back within a few weeks again to talk about other things from that book. But thank you for joining today, and until next time, God bless you, God bless your loved ones, and of course, God bless Mama Liberia. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned. Be safe.
Bosco baby, B to the O, S to the C, O, straight out of China. I represent LIB. The song playing in the background is my latest single called Like It or Not. You can find me on social, especially YouTube at Bosco_LIB, and also on Instagram at Bosco_LIB, and also on Facebook at Bus Music. Right now, you're watching the 1847 show. You know it's about you and me and all things Liberian. So follow the 1847 show on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also don't formerly